So we have arrived. So I've been meaning for a long time to do a video series, just sort of talking about like my experiences from the start to the end. This is sort of a way to put it all in one place, get it all down in video so that people could watch it without having to jump around and stuff or read a bunch of text or something along those lines. And it helps, if I could actually show you what happened as it happened. And they're logging a lot of these mountains out, so this could be, maybe some of the last chances I'll get to do this, to get these memories down for good on video. And it's also a good way, because I'm wanting to do podcasts, I'm wanting to reach out to other researchers and things like that. It's a good way to demonstrate the things that I did and also get my stories out there, put a face to me, so I can introduce myself to some of the people that host those shows and give them kind of a feel for what I do, what I've experienced, why I kind of see things the way that I see it and disagree with certain things, or, whichever. But anyway, so we're going to kick this off. So I've been a researcher since 2008. I had my first real experience in these woods after, several, outings. I'd go out at night. I'd, go out hiking in a lot of places in Virginia, North Carolina, and the Smoky Mountains, a few places in Tennessee. Never really had any luck, and I was pretty ignorant, I guess. More knowledgeable than most people, but still too ignorant to really be able to work with things. And finally, I was a truck driver for a couple of years, and I quit that in 2013. And I was like, you know what, let's go out there and get really serious about this, because it's something I was always passionate about, and I just needed, a little pick-me-up in life. And bounced around between the Grayson Highlands, a few other places. It wasn't really vibing, it didn't feel right. And so in these mountains, the people that live sort of around the foothills of them, they know, you hear stories, you get to know these people, have relatives that live up here, and they're aware of the fact that, there's Bigfoot up here. There's, they have gift shops and everything up here. It's just not widely talked about outside of this area, I guess is the way I would put that. But, people, the locals, they'll hear the sounds that they make, and they know what it is. They see them all the time. People interact a little bit with them. There's, it's not like hardcore hunting them like some places it is. So I think that they're a little more trusting here, it feels like, than in a lot of the other areas that I'd been to. But my first experience was actually coming down here to the spot, which is going to remain private. Nobody knows really where it's at except for a few close relatives and very, very, very close researcher friends. But so I come down, I get into these woods, and I decide that this is an extremely remote area. It's dead center in one of the biggest forests in America. And there's a lot of water, lots of deer. There's a lot of very rich resources down in this area. And so as I'm coming down through here, I would walk down through here, and I'd come across that always. And I come over, and I'm hearing something over in this direction. So on the map, I understand that there's a river right here in front of me, but that's not really what's there, right? But what I hear people talking. And one of them is a very large man with a very deep voice, and another one is it sounds almost like a kid, It doesn't sound like a man, it sounds like maybe like an 8-year-old boy or something, and they're clearly talking. At first, I didn't know what it was. I was very new to the area. I was just dropping my gear off, and I was leaving. It was a long walk to get back in here. I had to work the next day. So I kind of got down real low, and I walked up. It was like springtime or something like that, or late summer, I think, actually. I'd have to look it up. I'm not real clear. This is, I'd have to go back and get some of those details. But I come up closer, and I'm down real low, and it's just over this bend is where it's coming from. So I'm about right here when I stop moving. And so it's right over here is where the sound's coming from. Let's walk over here. This is where it's coming from. It's right down here. So this is technically a river, right? This has changed a lot. It's been 2 years since I was up here, so this is definitely changed quite a bit. That's part of them preparing to do the logging. I think that they've blocked a lot of the water that drains down into this. But so it's coming from right here, right where it would be sort of where you see the water. So that's where it's coming from. Because what this used to be, this was a pond. There's a huge beaver dam that's over here. I don't know if it's still there. And that blocked up the river, and this was just a giant pond/lake. So all that brown grass that you see there, that was water straight up, just covered in water. There was no sign that there was any vegetation under that at all. It was pretty deep. So about where this tree right here is, you see that little dude right there? So that's where the water ended. And so there was just land from there back. And what's underneath this, I'm not going to show it today because it's too much work and the sun's going down. What's underneath us is a cave. So there's a cave that you could fit about 5 good-sized people in, and there's nothing else. That's all it is. So it's good cover. It's very clean in there. It's pretty cool, you know. But I'm hearing that talking, and as I get closer, I can tell that it's not English. It's not, you know, I'm not like multilinguist or what, you know, multilingual. You know, I can't speak Spanish. It had kind of a twang to it, right? So probably more Spanish sounding than English, definitely. But it didn't sound like the Sierra sounds, the samurai chatter. It didn't have that much Oriental twang, but it had a little bit. And I think that they, I've been told this. It's like European. There's European Sasquatch, obviously, in the Highlands and Scotland and things like that, or you know, somewhere around in there. Some of those woods, there are some, I'm told, still. Norway, obviously, there's some, and I'm told that they kind of share an accent a little bit with the local population of people. That's just what I've heard, and I think that's true because these had almost more of a southern draw-ish kind of deal going on. Or it was at least like a slower talk, sort of how we are, how I am, versus what I was hearing in the samurai chatter. But yeah, I heard that. I didn't think anything about it. I thought it was just people because I wasn't hanging around. You know, I had to get back home. I was tired, had too much to eat. I was getting really weary, and it was a long walk back to the car. So I thought they were just hunters or people fishing because I thought there was a big flowing river coming through here. There was not. And so there were no other people down here because people just don't come down to this area. You know, in hindsight, I know that now. And so my first actual experience with one of them was actually hearing the quote-unquote samurai chatter. So that was interesting in hindsight. So the weekend rolls around just a few days after that, and I finally get my chance to come down here and stay. And so what I do is this is where I would always set up my hammock when I would come down here. It was between these two trees right here, and I'm always going to be able to easily pick them out. And so I would hang up one end of the hammock right here on this tree. The hammock would run through here, like up close to this one. I could hang stuff off this one if I wanted to. And then it would touch this one. And that's what I did. That's why I call myself the tree man, because I was always hung up in trees somewhere. Because I don't know why. It just made me feel safer, and it's really easy to pack that up and still stay warm without, you know, having to carry too much weight back in the woods. But so I come down here and I set it up. Nighttime rolls around and I go to sleep, and I'm awoken by the sound of what I call an 800-pound barred owl, and it's coming, you know, again from back over here, but it's not coming from, you know, where the water's at. It's coming from the other side of us this time, where the hill over there is, where all that vegetation has grown up. So that's where it's coming from, and you can hear it moving back and forth and up and down and stuff. You can clearly tell that it's moving around over there, and I mean, it's just, even coming from back there, it is just mind-blowing how powerful this sound is. And the thing about their sounds that I've noticed, whether they're imitating a dog, they do an extremely good dog imitation. I've heard in you know, places in southeastern Oklahoma. I've recorded it there. I've heard recordings in Texas, and I've heard it here a lot. I've recorded it a couple times here too. But so the thing between those dog sounds, the coyote sounds, and the barred owl especially sounds that they do, is that those animals, they don't usually force the sound out, is the way I would describe it. they are absolutely aggressively screaming it out. So it doesn't sound like a barred owl. It sounds like a barred owl from hell that's out like to attack you. So it's very aggressive sounding because they have to move that air through those enormous lungs. So it just kind of gives it an intimidating vibe, I guess. But you could tell that it's different. It's like the difference between a person that's very good at imitating a barred owl and a barred owl. Just go and listen to that. It's the exact same thing, just way louder. So I'm hearing that, and the reason that that wakes me up and that I know to stay awake now, otherwise I would have went to sleep, is because Arla Collette, there was a guy named, it was her and a guy named Midnight Owl on the Bigfoot forums, had, were describing an encounter. They had recordings, audio recordings of his experience. She had went and shown him a place and got him some experiences with Bigfoot. He saw the silhouette, and they were making the sounds. They're doing the same thing. It was a barred owl call. And they would do that, and the people, Midnight Owl and Arla and their friends, they would do the call back, and they would go back and forth. And you could tell that it was different than an actual owl's, just because people sound different. So she taught me that. I talked to her a lot before then, and then I dialed in and I knew that I needed to pay attention to this. So now I'm awake. I'm just laying in my hammock. I know to just stay extra, extra super still, right? Don't move. You start hearing them move around or something like that. They're not gonna, they're harmless. And if they're not harmless, there's nothing you can do about it. So, that's how I kind of view it. Don't worry about it. And if they're not harmless, you're not going to hear them coming. That's period. They'll get standoffish. I've had them get standoffish with me before, but that's usually, to me, that's just non-English, body language, like a bear does when it charges and pounds the ground and stuff. It's just telling you to leave, basically. No big deal. It's not actually a dangerous situation as long as you actually leave. But so getting off track, sorry. But so it comes down, and this is common. This is what they would almost always do. So you would very commonly hear a lot of activity over there, and sometimes you would hear one come up from there and go around that direction. That went on for years like that, because I would come down here all the time. But so now I'm hearing the barred owl calls. I'm wide awake, and something comes walking down the same exact direction that I come from. It has extremely long strides. I'm about 6'1", and it takes me, I could show you. My stride is about 3.5 feet. I have a very well-measured even stride, and so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, about 19 or 20 steps to get to here. And I would know that it was coming from here because this used to be much more grown up. There was like a wall of sticks and twigs that was right here that you would have to walk through, and it would, it'd crack them all apart. See how that's really open, but here, this used to not be so open. It's kind of broken down and rotted. You can see it's been knocked down. But so there was a racket. It was almost like a doorbell getting rung for me. After a while, I would always know that something was coming up on me. But so I covered that in about 20 steps, right? My stride's about 3 feet right now. And this covered it in about 8 to 10 steps. So 8 to 10 steps, very, very long, non-hesitant, I noticed. So a wild animal, like a bear, when it comes up on you, it'll step a few times and it'll hesitate, because I've had multiple encounters, usually due to my own error, with black bears, and they don't just bum rush you like that. They'll step a few times, they'll stop, smell the ground, step a few times, stop, smell the ground, and they shuffle as they walk. This was clearly not shuffling. It was like, stepping like that, picking its feet up better than me, not kicking anything. And it was so fast. I was going to get because how the setup is I would tie a rope around the top right here, over top of the hammock, and I would drape a tarp over top of the hammock using that rope. And I would also tie my .44 Magnum that I carry with me to the rope. So as I'm laying down, you look up and the 44 is right there in my face. So if I need to get it, I can pull it right out, right over my head. And so by the time that I heard that thing, or this, was a Bigfoot, and I'm pretty sure this one was a 7-foot tall female that I encountered numerous times in these woods. Very, I guess you could call it friendly, very friendly. But it would, it broke. By the time I heard it hit those woods, it wasn't running. It was a very relaxed but confident pace. And by the time that it did that and it was here standing next to me, it made those steps. I didn't even have time to get the gun out of the holster. So realizing that something's walking, reach up, grab the gun, flip the latch off of it, and start pulling it out. It was already standing right next to me. And when I say right next to me, I mean hammock's right here, which means that I'm laying about right here. Literally, if I had stuck my elbow out, I would have hit her in the belly. And so I'm laying here, right? And it's like right on top of me, and I'm not moving. I'm wide awake. My eyes are wide open because I know what it is now. Now I understand that, like, hey, that's definitely not an animal, because I can feel the body heat coming off of me, and I could see the moon was shining through the tarp. The tarp wasn't too thick, and the moon was, I think it was almost a full moon that night. So I could see it, the light beaming down, and I could see this silhouette kind of standing over me, just kind of blocking out that light in that one spot. It's you're much too tall to be a person, and a person wouldn't just walk up on you without announcing themselves, because they definitely were about to get shot that night. So I just laid there, and it was very quiet. It made no sounds out of its mouth. You could hear it kind of lightly breathing, and it would move. So it would kind of like, you'd see it kind of move that way, and then it would kind of lean that way, and it leaned right up against my head. I didn't look at it. I didn't want to startle it or seem like I was neurotic, because I was taught not to do that. Don't freak out and start chasing them, or don't bust out of the tent when one of them gets close to you. Just relax, let everything come with time, especially if you're in an area that you're going to want to keep coming back to. If you're going to an area, you're doing an expedition, it's going to be the only time you ever go there. Yes, be aggressive, absolutely. Get down there and get boogered up, as I would call it. That's fine. It's because it's not going to impede you at all. But if you're in an area that you're going to be in a lot, you need to be really, really, really consistent and relaxed. Otherwise, you're going to blow it. And when you blow it, they don't show back up for months, in my experience. They will just ignore you. And it doesn't, especially in mountains like this, where there is no hardly human interaction at all that happens. They have absolutely no problem staying away from people if they want to. They come up to you because they want to come up to you. But so it was there, and this one would always do this. It would have dirt. It would get dirt, because the dirt's really sandy here, and it would sprinkle it on top of the tarp. You'd hear it sprinkling this dirt on top of the tarp. I don't know why, if it was just like a sense of humor thing. They definitely seem like they have a huge sense of humor. And it just walked off onto that direction, on down to where the river continues down there. I'll show you that in a moment. And that just started started it all. I mean, that was like the coolest thing ever. It just totally blew my mind how fast it happened. And really, I was already super interested in it, but that really locked it down. And it helped me relax around them, because then I didn't know if they were, dangerous or something like that. I was told that they weren't, but I was still kind of on nerve, I didn't want one charging me and give me a heart attack or something like that. So I eventually fall asleep. The owl sound over there continues on and off throughout the night. It would wake me up. I would wake up, and again, I was approached again. Same exact thing, gets right up on top of me, literally just repeats exactly what it had done earlier, walks right back off the same direction. And you hear stuff walking around, that's way too agile to be a deer, which means that its step is too long. It's picking its foot up, and it's clearly, sitting it down like 4 or 5 feet from the next step. So it's, just really wide strides. So I sleep really good. I wake up the next morning to the sound of what I interpret as something taking a stick and hitting it against a Tupperware bowl. That's the only way I can describe it. And it's doing this in a rhythm. It's like a musical rhythm. I couldn't say that it's like a song or anything, but you could tell that there's method to what it's doing. It's like, this isn't what the sound was, but you could imagine it was something like ta-ta-ta-ta-ta, like literally something like that. And I'm listening to this and I'm like, that's a pattern. I don't hear anything else going on, but I'm hearing that, and it's coming from over here where I heard the talking sound coming from. So it's really close to me. That's about a 8 to 9 foot drop from where the top where I was standing down to where the ground is there. And whatever this is, it's just standing over there and it's doing this. There's clearly something there doing it. And so I'm like, well, that's interesting. And I wanted to get rocks and start clacking rocks together, but I couldn't find any. So what I do is I use my hands, and I would clap my hands to try to repeat the pattern. I couldn't do it. I couldn't clap my hands fast enough to repeat that pattern of what it was doing. So we do that 2 or 3 times. I think actually 4 or 5 times. Yeah, it was 4 or 5 times. And it starts thundering. There's a thundercloud coming from this direction. I knew it was going to be really bad rain. I needed to get my gear together, because I didn't want my stuff getting wet and destroying a lot of my electronics. I had my phone out and crap like that. Stuff was expensive. I didn't have anything good to record anything. I got a little bit, but nothing. I couldn't afford to lose anything. I was poor. I was a meat cutter at the time. I didn't make any money. By the time I paid rent, it was all I could do to afford gas to come up here. I was driving an Expedition at the time, so gas mileage was like -11. So what happened? So I'm hearing what sounds like I would hear like a scratchy woman yelling sound. I was hearing that coming from this direction, and I've heard that a lot up here. It's a very large female voice. I hear talking, I hear yelling sometimes. Some of my relatives hear it also. I think a lot of people think that that's a mountain lion. Mountain lions don't do that at all. That's not what a mountain lion sounds like. I know what a mountain lion sounds like. It's not an impressive sound at all. It doesn't sound like a woman screaming, because a woman screaming sounds like a woman screaming. So I'm hearing that. It's just sort of like a chattering sound. It's kind of wild sounding. The thunderclouds coming up. And so what I do is I lean up right in the hammock. I'm about right here. I lean up and I'm reaching down to the ground to grab my boots so I can turn around and put them on. I've not moved the tarp. I'm keeping that cover in front of me because I don't want that, that neurotic scene of me flipping it up and trying to see it, because all I'm going to see is a blur running away, right? And I wouldn't have guessed I would have seen anything there that would have been tall enough to look over that ledge at me. So when I do that, this is where I'm proven wrong. I still have this rock. The act of reaching up and grabbing that boot, whatever was there tapping through a rock, about a fist-sized rock, and it hit right under my head. So in between where my hand's at and my head is right up above this, it hits right there, and it knocks the crap out of that tarp. It would have knocked me silly if it hit me, but I guess the aim was that good, or it was just kind of hoping it didn't hit me. It hit, and then it dropped down on the ground, and I was like, whoa, that was amazing. And then I did pull the tarp out, and I didn't see anything. But whatever it was, either ducked down and just kind of snuck away, which would have been really easy. But I'm pretty sure that it was over 9 feet tall, because it had to have been looking at me to have seen me do that and to be able to aim that little rock as precisely as what it did. And that was pretty much it for that day. I had to leave then. And in that moment, the storm was rolling in. I didn't have any kind of real waterproofing gear back then. I couldn't afford like a coat that was actually waterproof. I was going to get soaked bad, and my backpack wasn't good for that stuff either. So I go away, and now I'm brainstorming ideas, right? What's my next step? What am I going to do next? And so what I do is I start making food bowls, right? So we have about 450 pound. It's about as big as I've seen up here in the top of the mountains. In the foothills, I think they've caught 500 pound bear before. Everything here is just huge. I mean, the squirrels are as big as a cat. Like I said, very resource rich. So we have a lot of bear up here, but I figured it didn't really matter. I want to set food out, so it was like organic peanut butter and apples, organic apples, and I would put it in a bowl, right? And what I would do is tough Tupperware bowls, like the thicker stuff, and I would put the lid on top of it, but I wouldn't attach the lid to it. What I would do is I would tie a bandana around it to lock the lid on it, just to see if something would like take the whole bowl. Will it shred the bowl? Will it, untie the bandana or something like that and get into it, to see like what different animals I thought how they would interact with it, right? A bear would probably just rip it apart and then take the goods out and leave the plastic mess there like most animals would. Some animals will carry it off just a little ways, and then some animals just won't touch it, or they're not animals. I don't believe the Bigfoot are animals, but yeah. So that was something that would happen. That's when I first started noticing this. They when I would leave food around here within about a 300-foot radius of right here where I'm standing, animals wouldn't touch it. The food would get, either the bowl would be completely taken away, never to be seen again. People say that bears will eat the whole bowl. I don't think so, because this stuff was going on well after the bears had all gone to sleep, like well into the wintertime. And a brutal winter time too, and the bowl would be gone and I would never see it. I've been all over these mountains, I've never found a one. So I think they take them and they use them for stuff, which was the idea. I wanted to give them something that they would be able to use, something that was interesting, because I'd heard they like baskets and bags and things like that were tough and waterproof and crap like that. But so yeah, I come up here, I drop several of these bowls off, and I mean, not even a squirrel would touch the food, which is mind-blowing, because I was regularly finding scat and tracks of, very huge bears and deer all over the place, but I would never find them within like I said, a 300-foot radius of where I'm standing right now. It was just like there was like a force field that stopped animals from coming in here, and I think that's because the Bigfoot were coming in here and they were marking their territory, so that was keeping everything else away, because there's nothing going to mess with that, especially in these woods. They're twice as big as anything that's here, easy. But so I noticed that I get frustrated. At the time I wasn't, thinking that it was like Bigfoot or something like that. I was just thinking like, nothing's taking the food. I'm not getting any data. When I was getting, information, I was getting information that something is preventing everything that is around these woods from touching those bowls, and it did that for weeks. I mean, and then eventually the bowls just kind of, they would either vanish or they would stick around. I don't know. Like, I'd have to go back and look. I think those I had to throw them away. They started rotting, I think. Yeah. So that first set, they definitely started rotting. Nothing would touch them. They wouldn't even be manipulated at all. I would take pictures of them. The lids wouldn't even be moved. No teeth marks on the plastic, nothing like that. It just completely blows my mind still that they're able to influence animals that much just by marking territory, I guess, because that has to be what it was. But so, I'm leaving that stuff up there, and I'm also brainstorming ideas of things that I could leave up here that weren't food items, something that an animal in the wild wouldn't give a crap about. And one of them was a little Chewbacca toy. He's about yay big. And this little Chewbacca toy, if you shook it, it was very cute. And it kind of resembled a very deformed Bigfoot. And if you shook it, it would roar. So I took that thing and I put it in a bowl and sealed it. That way it wouldn't get wet. And I put it right here. It was right here. So I set that little dude right there, down here deep in the woods. I think I put some crystals and things like that, because I heard they like crystals. I think at that point I'd done that, and a few other things. And I left and came back, and then I wasn't able to stay that night. That was just so this is like the next week after the food bowls hadn't been messed with. The food bowls were still there. I remember that. See, I'm recalling this all from memory. I don't have a script for this. I'm recalling straight from memory, and this stuff was like 2014, 2015. So bear with me here. But and the food bowls are still there. They're completely untouched. This is a week after that, and I'm coming up here just for the day to check it out. I only got like an hour to check it out, and the sun's going to go down. I don't have a flashlight, and I got to work the next day, right? It's about an hour and 30-minute drive to get to the spot to where I start walking to get down here. So there was a lot of effort to do this, but so I come down through, and mind completely blown. Everything else is completely untouched. Nothing really cared about any of it. But the Chewbacca, specifically that little Chewbacca in his bowl, was gone. The whole bowl was gone, and so that's really amazing, right? That's mind blowing. There's really no way to write that off, because no animal would just do that, especially for the fact that the food wasn't bothered. Um, so something obviously intelligent was able to recognize that, hey, that's me. Let's take that. And not only did that happen, so I'm standing here and my mind is just like, holy crap, like that actually just happened. This is like the sort of stuff like Arla and guys like Robert Morgan had been teaching me, that sort of like how they are if you actually like get down and interact with them and aren't afraid of them, aren't afraid to get close to them, like most researchers are. Most researchers never want to see one. They're just not comfortable around them, which is fine, I understand, but that's not the way I am at all. I like to get up in their face. I like them when they get right up close to me and I get charged, or I see one, or one of them throws a rock at me. I love that kind of stuff. I don't like any other way to deal with them. I don't know, I've just never had that fear really of them. I don't know why that is. Maybe I'm just crazy. But I don't know. It is what it is. But so I'm there. I'm looking at that for a few seconds, and like my jaws pretty much hit the ground. And from over in that direction, again, that little hill over there, you just hear just wham, wham, like just these loud knocks. I mean, it's just like something taking these like 50-pound boulders and just slamming them together. And whatever it is, there's good enough cover that I wouldn't be able to see it. Like, it's still no way I could see it, but it's definitely looking right at me, and it was waiting for me to give a reaction to that being missed. Just is. This is a fact. This is how they are. All right, you got all these guys out here that are scared to death of them, and they go out there. It's like, oh, it charged me, or it yelled at me, or whatever. It's like, yeah, they do that. But it didn't hurt you. I mean, I've run into stories where they've definitely killed people, but it was usually after they've gotten shot. So there is kind of like an edge to them, like any wild animal or any person really has. Even the nicest person has kind of that edge. But for the most part, they're not. They don't really mess with you, and this is really how they typically are. But it does that, and I'm like, whoa, holy cow. And I grab some rocks and I try to do some knocks back to see if I get something back, and nothing. I don't get anything back. I'm like, okay, like the sun's going down. I gotta document all this stuff. I gotta make sure that the toy didn't fall down there or something. Like maybe a bird knocked it down. I'm running through all the scenarios, so I walk down. I'll show you the area. I'm not going to do it right now. I walk down, I come around, and I eventually make my way down there, and I'm looking, and there's nothing. It's nothing around. Something I noticed as I was coming around the bend, I smelled, it's almost like a musky, I hate to call it like a fart smell, but that's kind of what it smelled like. It's not a good smell, but it's not terrible either. It's just like walking into a wall of fart and musk. And I would smell this a lot. Like you'll just be like hanging out here, and all of a sudden you'll smell it, or you hear something walk up on you and you'll start smelling that. It's not overpowering at all. It's just sort of like, I guess that's just this one particular foot's body odor. It's I guess it's a natural body odor. It must be, because it's not terribly dirty smelling. It's just a little unpleasant. But yeah, so that's mind blowing. It's all right. I check it out, and I come back up, and I'm like, I'm gonna do some more knocks. So I pick up the rock, and I'm like, maybe I'll get a return. And I do 1, 2, 3, and down where I was just at, where I'd smelled that smell. 1, 2, 3 comes right back at me, and I'm like, oh man, that's awesome. That's just blew my absolute shoes off. I mean, just amazing. It was amazing. So go back to work, come back, and I mean, it was just consistently. I mean, I would have to. I'm getting, I took a break from it for a couple of years. I'm remembering a lot of this stuff. I'd have to go back. I documented all of it, wrote it all down. I was constantly communicating with other researchers. Every time something would happen, I'd go and I'd text them, and I'd save the text and everything. So I saved everything. got some stuff on video. And so we'll fast forward. I got to think of how I'm going to organize this. Yeah, so we're going to keep everything up in this area. So there's woods on further down in there that I have more experiences in. So I started digging further into the woods after that experience. I did start digging further into the woods, and I had my first sighting actually way far back in there. It was one of the coldest nights ever up in these mountains, and I ran into I guess it was about a 7 foot tall, at least 7 foot tall Bigfoot, very broad in the shoulders, like the Kentucky Bigfoot on a hill, I think is the name of the picture. That's what it looked like. And I think I ran up on it when it was sleeping. We'll get to that story later. So all that stuff happens then. So we have like a gap where I'm not so much as staying in this area anymore. Because I'm wanting to explore more, and I'm trying to figure out a way to get across the water easily, just come around and hook around and get back to where that hill's at. I'm just exploring, that's all it is. And I would just kind of incrementally push my gear back further and further a few miles every time I would come up. Because I try to make a point to be asleep and not moving, not making any sound when the sun's down. So like in a couple of hours, I would usually be bedded up, but I'm not going to do that tonight. I'm going to just leave. Just don't really feel it tonight. But, little bug. So fast forward past all of that, and this isn't going to be necessarily in order. So now I'm working with a new bunch of researchers that I'm still working with. They're fantastic, very good friends of mine now. And I've moved back to this spot, and they're really, now things are really starting to heat up. I'm starting to learn a lot. I'm really comfortable. And I think they're really comfortable too with me because, I'm just chill. I'm not chasing them around. I'm not, going crazy. I'm not making a lot of sounds. That's something to get to in another area. So actually, first experience was the samurai chatter. Before the experience. No, after. See, I'm trying to get it all. This is like impromptu. So after the experience with the one walking down to me, after all of that stuff had happened, I'd had more experiences on down that direction. You keep going down there, and there's some more areas that I'd just walk through in the snow. So it was snowing then. I'd still never seen them, and I was still kind of ignorant of the nature of them. I didn't really understand kind of how they go about things, how they think about people. And I don't think anybody 100% does, but now some people definitely do. But I know I don't. At least I didn't then. Certainly not. But I did a knock, and it was around like a bend. So like how these hills kind of roll like that. It was like that. I'm standing on one end of the hill, and it's on the other end of this set of hills, and there's a creek that runs there in front of us. I'd have to show it to you to accurately describe it. That's when I wanted to do videos. But you hear this boom, 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 like cannons going off, and it's clearly something knocking rocks together. At least that's the only thing I can think it was. It was, again, those boulders, and it's moving around the hill towards me, and it's huge. Whatever it is, it's just like a tower kind of just walking through the woods. And it stops just out of eyesight. I was like, I'm going to get to see one. And I was kind of freaking out, panicking, because I was like, this is going to scare the crap out of me. But at the same time, I was super excited because it's like, I'm going to get to see this. And this is going to be like the most spectacular thing I've ever seen in my life, obviously. But it stopped just short. They would always do that. It's like they knew. It's like, I guess they could see. I don't know if they were being warned by another one that was watching me. I was like, hey, don't come around there because he's going to be able to see you. You might get shot, because I did have a gun on me. But it stopped. And then I guess it just turned around and just beat feet back the direction it came. And I didn't see any sign at all that there was anything there. There was just nothing, because there was a creek. I think it was moving through that creek, so it was all rocks. Yeah, stuff like that. Like that is just, whoa, total adrenaline junkie kind of deal there. When I say those sounds were so loud, even though we were blocked by that hill, it was still rattling my chest. And it was a good ways away. Just super cool. But so that's, again, getting sidetracked. Damn, carpal tunnel. moved my hand too fast. I about threw it out. But yeah, so here we'll move on down. I don't have my pistol on me, but I'm not too worried about it, because I want to show this area. This is where I used to leave gifts, because I would never leave the stuff. You know, I'm not going to leave a gift on top of me where I'm sleeping if I'm wanting, you know, them to interact with it, because they would come and they would interact with the stuff when I was sleeping. They would come up and mess with it. They would walk right past me and come down here to get to it. I'm trying to make sure that I'm right. It's changed a lot. Yeah, this is it. I wonder if any of that stuff is still here. So another thing that happened after the one, I don't want to skip this part. Yeah, so directly, like mixed in there, it would have been after that one walked straight up on me, after that night. Something walking around down there. That's probably nothing. Could be like a deer or something. But lots of animals up here. That's what I love about this place. You can see even that bird is, you probably see him on the video. I mean, he's fat. Everything up here is just bigger than what you see in the other areas. You know, in East Tennessee, it's all bigger than that. But yeah. So one night, it would have been directly after that. The one walked up on me. I had another night where I was sleeping here, and you heard one, you know, barred owl sound, loud booming 800-pound barred owl sound one time, loud booming explosive barred owl sound again right here. I didn't have my gun on me. I decided, like, I know they're here. That means that there's not bears. That means I don't need a gun. That's pretty much what my mentality was. And I wanted to see if it made a difference, me having the gun and not. And in my experience, it doesn't. It doesn't make a difference, but it's just me. So I think that's what helps that a lot. I'm listening, not so much, you know, it's not like a, oh, that's a squatch kind of listen. It's a listen because I have had numerous bear encounters down here, and they are huge. I don't have my pistol on me, so but and also just listening in general. But yeah, so the second barred owl call goes off right there, and again, I'm in my hammock asleep, and then, you know, I kind of lay back down. I'm like, okay, that was kind of cool. You know, maybe one of them will walk up on me or something, or, you know, something interesting will happen. I lay back down. I don't think I fall back asleep, and I just hear, right where I heard that second barred owl call, just a huge tree just crack, pow, 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 and just slam into the ground. You know, something clearly, and I guess it just pushed the tree over just to see what happened. And of course, I'm like expecting to hear something like screaming, like running up at me, you know, just like bracing myself for something crazy to happen. But instead, what happens is a little after that is I hear a very large stick down on the ground next to where my hammock was at, like right next to me, just goes crack, and and you get that feeling that you could tell, like, even if you can't see somebody, right, that somebody's standing next to you in the dark, because there's like that gap. I call it the gap of air. You could tell, like, the wind's not blowing right there at that one specific spot, and that something's kind of like breathing a little bit. You know, it's being quiet, but it's definitely there. That was going on. So, like, there was something. I guess one of them was counting some coup on me. It was sneaking up on me. Yeah, not really making any noise, and then it steps in that stick and just froze in place. That's the only thing I can figure that happened. Yeah, so that was an experience before the chapters that happened way back further in there. And so that's, you know, that's chapter 2, right? So this that I'm getting ready to talk about, so the barred owl pushing the tree over, that's part of chapter 1. That's what we're going to call that. The food being left out, the Chewbacca, the knocks, the walking up on me, all that stuff. Chapter 1. Chapter 2, that's where I venture further back into the woods and where I finally had my first actual sighting. It was, it was okay sighting. It was daylight. Not perfect or anything like that. And then, that went on for a while. And then chapter 3 is when I got with my 2 friends now, when things really started picking up. Like we started getting really clever and getting some really good details. So one of the things that I would do is I learned that, hey, it's like, so start putting yourself in the, right? So they're people, right? Is it person, is it an ape? You got to make a decision at some point on how you feel about it. I definitely felt like this is definitely like a quote unquote cavemanish kind of thing. It's like it's a person that's perfectly adapted to the environment, obviously. Probably extremely closely related to us, just as curious. That's the only thing that'll really overpower their caution and fear of people is their curiosity. 100% something that is a fact. So I was like, put myself in their shoes. If I'm like them, I don't have access to internet. I don't really travel. I can't really go to places where humans are at. I don't really get to experience a lot of things. One thing that I was taught is that when they're very little, they see humans and they don't understand that humans are dangerous. They don't understand that at all. It's just not something that clicks in their head. And so like they'll interact way more with people when they're younger, and they have to be taught. They have to be taught to be afraid of us, which is, there's a reason for that. It's because we're psychopaths. But like trying to get myself into that frame of mind, right? And to interact with something like that, like a people like that. It's like, how do you do it? How do you like relay information? And this was an idea that I started in what we'll call chapter 2, back in another area over there, is I would take pictures and I would print them out of like either Bigfoot art, like art that I think William Osmussen, I think was the guy's name, was one of them. Or the Kiamichi Giants board. There's a board they did. He did some amazing art, and everybody was saying like, hey, that's pretty much 100% what I was looking at. And I print his pictures out and I'd leave them out. Stuff like that. Stuff like people standing around with wildlife. People interacting with wildlife in not unpeaceful ways. Just things that I thought that they'd be able to relate to and would be curious about. And I think that helped the situation a lot, because it was, for researchers, that stuff like that helps a lot, because it's a way for you to show them that you know what's up, that they're there. Hey, it's you being like, hey, I'm dialed in. I know exactly what's going on. I know what you are. Like, you don't freak me out at all. And then I think that helps them relax. I think that actually, doing things like that is what helped things progress as smoothly as what they did over the years. That and just my attitude of like not pushing it, being patient, trying to be respectful. Like I talked about the experience with the knocks where it was coming around the corner. I think that I jumped one is what happened. So they were up there doing some business, and then I did some knocks, because I think this has happened several times. Chapter 2 will have what I called the firing range knocks. I'll do that another day. And I think that was the same deal. Like I did some knocks and it disrupted something that they were doing, and they thought that I was one of them, and it confused them, and it just kind of threw them out of whack. So I don't think that's really a good thing to do that very often. I think it's good for cinematic purposes. If you can get that on video, that's really amazing, and it's a really cool experience. But if you're doing it a lot, making a lot of noise or something like that, it disrupts them, and they'll distance themselves from you, or they'll just get pissed. So not a tangent, but so I learned about the pictures over there in those areas, and so I started doing that here. I'd take them and I'd cover them up with leaves, and there's a lot of videos that I've taken of me coming down and seeing the pictures manipulated and stuff like that. And I would notice that like one of them would be like back up in this used to be more grown up. One of them would be like set up perfectly against one of those, like sitting up vertically like that, like something that had just been sitting there just staring at this picture, captivated. And that picture was one that would move around a lot over time, and it was a man, a bear trainer, standing next to about a 13-foot tall grizzly bear and touching its belly, and the bear's just chilling, and they have bear here, but the bear are probably more like 6-7 feet tall, maybe at the tallest. But I mean, this thing was huge, and the guy had no fear of it at all. And I guess them seeing that really was interesting, because I thought it was cool. I'd bring pictures of like my baby nieces and stuff, like our babies, what a human baby looks like, and that would get moved around, and things like that. I'll leave up here. People at circuses, some of our like city streets, space, lots of space and really pretty pictures from woods around the world. And I think that's an extremely successful thing. That's a method that I want to give to other researchers in a lot of different ways. Then gifts too, I would leave like non-food items down here. Food items I would leave usually a little further away, like 30-40 feet, something like that. And some stuff would get taken, some stuff would get taken in big ways. There are so many experiences that there is no way that I can make a video getting it all in, just recalling it, because I'm already thinking so now this isn't going to be in order, because it was so much for what I would call, quote unquote, the chapter 3, when I was working with my two friends. Now there was so much coming at me and so much happening. Not every time I would come up here, but it was so frequent because I was coming up here every weekend, and I was doing that for like a year or 2 years. There's just so much that I can't keep it straight in my head. But I remember one time it was you'd have the pictures down, they'd be buried up, and it would look like nothing had ever touched the pictures. Go through and look at the order of the pictures, and the order would be off because I would record the order. So they would get them out, they would spread them out, look at them, and then they would put them all back in, but they wouldn't put them back in the right order. One time I came up here closer to Halloween and brought some candy. I left the candy in the wrappers, and I would open the end of the wrappers so they wouldn't have to finagle with it. They could just, so it was like the sleeves that you get at Walmart, with the little mini Hershey bars, it's like Butterfingers and stuff. You know what I'm talking about. It's got the little individually wrapped bars, and then it's got the sleeve that it's in. Well, I would pop the end of that sleeve open, and then I would open those individual bars, and something that obviously very dexterous was taking those sleeves out of the bag. I got this recorded. It blew my mind. It was taking it out of that Walmart bag, opening the bag up, taking it out of the bag, taking the individual candies out of the wrappers and putting the wrappers back in the sleeve. So I wouldn't even notice that the candy was gone, because they were being so neat with the trash. They were putting it back in. I don't know if they were messing with me or what that was, but that was another thing that was just like, holy crap, that is super cool. I'm glad I paid a little bit of attention to detail, unlike I usually do. So so that's stuff that would happen right here. And frequently here in this area, you would smell that musky smell. Most of them, like the one that got up directly next to me, no smell at all. It almost like a horse kind of smell, like it had like a good smell to it, and it's what I would call it, a pleasant odor, but it was like a horse almost. But there was one of them that had like a more musky, stronger smell, and I would smell that frequently down here, like just off and on. Like you'd hear something move, and then you would smell it, because this used to be a much taller brush through here. Yeah, I mean, just going through all those, just reliving this, getting to see this again. It'd been so long since I'd been down here. Lots of toys. People would give me toys. My boss one time, she gave me like a Chewbacca, giant, really cute Chewbacca stuffed, and that eventually went missing. It took a long time, but eventually that did go missing. They took that. Just leaving that stuff out here. I'd cover it up. Sometimes really good, and sometimes I wouldn't. Sometimes it didn't matter. Food, I mean, leaving food out here, seeing how it'd get messed with. I think this is new. Yeah, there's the beaver dam. Look, you can see it right there. That used to be much bigger. At least I think that's the first one. Yeah. And you see it's all beat down. That's probably why the water's lower in the creek. That thing used to be about 4 feet tall. And I think I used to estimate about 14 feet long. If that's the right one, let me get closer. No, okay, yeah, so that's the little one. They eventually, this is a few years ago, the beavers made that. There's a bigger one right there that you can't see that they made. Yeah, so that's, you had to walk down right here where that's at. They used to be much lower, and I would walk down through that to get up to where that cliff was at, to where the cave's at. See, that's covering this spot. So this stuff's going on all the time. So I'd already seen my first one. I don't have like an exact timeline, right? We're not going into that level of detail. I could do that if I wanted to, but it would take a lot of work, and I'm kind of lazy. I have all that stuff recorded. That's why I make videos like this. That's why I'm constantly communicating on, through chat, through Facebook or emails or something like that, because I can save those. I can save all those memories exactly as they were, as they happened. So if I need to go back, I can get that. That's another big piece of advice I give to researchers. The devil's in the details. Keep all that stuff, keep it all down, written. All right, it's getting a little chilly. So let's come back. So this is the gifting, all that stuff, the pictures getting moved around. I got a video one time where I think I had something probably close to 50 pictures, because I had a laminating machine at this point, and I would laminate them so that it wouldn't, because they would rip the pictures apart sometimes. I think younger ones are real wild, and they'll rip stuff apart and shred it like a raccoon will. You'll see like teeth marks and crap, and you'll think that it is a raccoon until something else goes on, and then it kind of a little different. Or why is the raccoon messing with that? But yeah. So I was laminating them. Never did have a problem with the laminated pictures. They wouldn't mess with those in that way. They wouldn't rip them up. So we come back here. So now, what I'm going to call chapter 3. So the whole time that's going on down there where I'm leaving those gifts right there, for the most part, I'm always sleeping right here again up in my trees, because I understand now at this point that it doesn't do any good for me out here in these woods to be chasing them down, just because they're like 10 feet tall. And I'm just a little dude. I'm like 6 feet, and I just ain't got the energy for that crap. Ain't no way I'm going to catch them. But and then I didn't want to keep pushing up on them, risk making them uncomfortable or something like that. And when you're out doing that kind of stuff, you miss out on a lot of things, a lot of details. So I just pretty much become stationary at that point. And I think there are so many experiences that happened in this part that it's hard to even think of where to start. This isn't the first experience, but this was a really, really, really big one, and I think it gives a good insight into how they work with people, right? So how they deal with people that they like interacting with, and it's pretty wild. So I'm up here sleeping, and you're hearing knocks and things walking around all over the woods, right? It's just like, it's crazy. You're just hearing pop, pop, then a whoop, the whoop sound that they do, the single whoop. You're hearing a little bit of the owl sound. It's just wildness going all around. There's probably 3 of them, I would say, just moving around. And so that's good. That helps me relax a little bit out in the woods, because back then I was still nervous about bears for whatever reason. Nowadays I'm not. This was years ago. This was like 2014, this would have been 2015. Yeah. 2015 time frame, and it's 2021 now. I've had a lot of experience out in the woods since then, where I kind of chill a lot more, especially in these woods, because they're like my backyard now. And I've run into bears enough that I know how to deal with that. And it's rare anyway. So I'm hearing all these sounds going around, and I'm on edge, because I think that there are bears here, and that they are kind of like not human friendly, let's put it that way. Because what happened is that chapter 2 area over here, I used to leave my sleeping bag out. In my sleeping bag, I never eat in it or anything like that. Literally the only scent in that sleeping bag is me. It smells like me. Well, the bag that it was in had been shredded apart, and the sleeping bag had been drug out of it and just obliterated. I mean, it was just eviscerated. And that was heartbreaking, because that was my favorite sleeping bag. It's like a Heritage Hunter, I think is what the model is. So I had to sleep without a sleeping bag that night. That sucked. I didn't have enough money to get another one of those for a long time. But so I'm thinking that there had to have been a bear. Bigfoot wouldn't do that, and Bigfoot would totally fucking do that stuff. Yeah, they do all kinds of stuff. So it could have been one. I'm not saying that it was, but it could have been. So now I'm thinking, it's like, well, the only thing that bag smelled like was me. That means that thing was interested in my smell, and it was like tearing into that. Maybe it's interested in trying to get a piece of me or something. I got this bear out here that I'm mad at now, and I'm just got a chip on my shoulder about this. And so I'm up here sleeping, and the way this sets off is that something starts moving again from this direction. I hear it start, and what this would do is it would, 2 steps, and it would stop. And it was, that was nothing. And this thing, it's just rock, where this ground is on top of rock, it was so heavy that when it would do that, the ground would shift under its weight, all right? The ground flexes a little bit when they walk up here. When some of them would walk, I think there's some really big ones that would come around. When they would walk, the ground flexes under them, and you can tell it. You might not hear it walking up on you. Really, you might not. You'll hear something, but it's not loud. But you'll feel it, because what happens is this tree and that tree will bow in just a little bit. Everything will be totally still. But you'll hear something come kind of creeping up on you, and you get that feeling like, hey, the wind's, nothing's moving right there, and then you'll feel it kind of bow in and bow out with the step. And that's what this did. So this thing would, take those 2 steps, you'd feel it in the ground, like you'd feel it shake, and then it would kind of hesitate a little bit, and then it would 2 more big steps. It was just creeping up closer to me. And that really freaks me out, because every time that I had a Bigfoot, when it was obviously a Bigfoot walking up to me or any kind of interaction with them, there's no hesitation ever. They don't, in my experience with the ones here, and the ones in the Kiamichi Mountains, they don't hesitate at all. They get right up on you, and they get in your face like instantly. And I don't know if that's like a defensive, if that's like a tactical thing, to where like they're on top of you, they can control the situation better, or if it's just because that's just kind of their attitude. They're very, they're a lot different than an animal in a lot of ways. But yeah, so this is like a bear, like a huge bear coming at me. I'm thinking, and I'm like, I'm getting ready to have to get wild, and I'm going to blow this thing away. Like, it's getting ready to die. And so I'm like, all right, don't freak out too much. Don't just like roll out a hammock with a 44 mag and just start blasting the first thing you see, because maybe you're getting tested. Maybe you're wrong, and you're going to end up blowing a Bigfoot away, and that's going to be a nightmare, because now I'm attached to him. It's like I'm really super attached to him at this point, because I had a lot of experiences with him. I built up a lot of trust, and just really liked him. I really enjoyed being around them. And so, so I'm like, all right, I'm pissed is what I am. I'm not scared. I'm mad, because here's this freaking bear up here messing up my job, my vibe, and I'm having this good Bigfoot activity going all around me. I got this bear here, it's, snuck through, and it's messing with me. Then this is probably that bear that's messing with, just all this stuff's going through my head. It's messing with my stuff, and it wants a piece of me, and I need a new rug anyway. And so this thing, it gets up, and it gets up close, and I'm like, all right, it's on. Like, this is how it happens. This is what they do. Like, they hesitate right up to you, and then they just jump you. So it's either me or it. And as sure as crap, I grabbed that tarp and I ripped that thing apart, and I got my headlamp. I turned that on, and I look right at where that thing's at, and it is gone. And it's not gone because it had just like vanished or something like that. It was there. What happened was it like a bolt of lightning, this thing took off back through those woods, and it was greener then, because I think this is like springtime, so it had a little bit of cover, but you could see it. Like, you could see everything just in the wake of this thing crashing through those woods. Just running off. I couldn't see it though. It was that fast. It was that fast, and the time that it took me to flip that light on and then rip that tarp, it was that fast to get that tarp off. It was already past those down the trees there. Man, I got really bad carpal tunnel. I've got to be careful with that. Like it pops and stuff. IT guys, so I gotta be more careful about how I take care of my hands. But yeah, I mean, but yeah, it was just gone. I mean, just in incredible speed, because it was obviously facing this direction, right, when it's coming up to me. So I think it was facing that direction. It was literally probably about right where that stick's at. So, right here is probably about where I was laying, and it's about right where this stick's at. So that's about maybe 4 feet from me at most. It's right on top of me, man. So it covered that distance between that stick and that, those 20 paces for me, 10 paces for one of them, in literally the blink of an eye. It's just out of there. And I'm like, well, that was wild. Hopefully that's all the business I'm going to get out of it. And I'm pretty sure at that point, I got up and I went to go take a leak. And I went to go take it back there up against those logs. I just walked back. And I know you're supposed to go further away because bears, like, they'll come up and they'll smell it. And yeah, I wouldn't imagine that a Bigfoot would be sitting around smelling a person's pee. I'm sure there's a reason if they to do it, but I don't know. I don't know about that. I've never seen one do it, so I can't attest to it. But bears definitely will. And like, that's a good way to attract a bear into your camp that's curious about what this new scent is, because that's how they work. It's like a shark on land, just way friendlier. Sharks are not friendly, or smart, dumb animals. But yeah, so it comes back. So I'm laying there again. I'm listening to all these sounds. I'm like, all right, man, that bear is gone. I don't have to worry about this. I ran that thing off. If it was a bear at this point, I smell a skunk. I just started smelling a skunk. Yeah, strong. It's almost like a downwindy kind of smell. It passed really quick. I got a good whiff of that. But anyway, yeah. So it runs off. And here it comes back, all right? Like, this is like a few hours down. As far as I remember, it was a few hours from that. And it comes back, and it stops. You can clearly hear it there smelling that pee. And I'm like, that is definitely not a Bigfoot, I'm thinking now. That is a big bear, and this bear is getting ready to be on my floor. That's what's getting ready to happen. This thing is dead. But I don't need to, like, flip out and kill it, like, I want to. It's like, because what if I'm wrong? If it's still kind of got a little bit of doubt in my mind. What if I'm wrong? What if I'm wrong and it is a bear and it eats me too? So I'm thinking about getting eaten. I'm thinking about shooting a Bigfoot in the face and ruining my life. That's pretty much what I'm dealing with now. It's going through my head, just racing. I mean, my heart is just a million miles an hour. The adrenaline's kicked in. I'm ready to just flip out on this thing. I'm going to jump on this thing's back and beat it to death with a hatchet, So I lay down, it does the same exact thing. Doo-doo, doo-doo, doo-doo. Comes up to me, slowly edging up on me. And maybe that may actually be not carpal tunnel and COVID problems. I have heart problems, and so circulation isn't as good as what it used to be. I might need to put a jacket on here in a little bit. But yeah, so it comes back up, and this time I'm like, all right, dude, you're done. And this time I'm going to get you. And so I do the same thing, but this time I'm slower. It's like I want to get the tarp up real slow, because maybe it's a Bigfoot, because that's kind of weird behavior for a bear to just be hanging out here next to you. Because I thought a bear would just ambush you, like it would just take off running at me. You get a little close and it would take off running. That's what I thought would, how an attack is. I try to read up on stuff like that. But yeah, this thing, it gets right here, and it's right on top of me, just like what they would do. It is right next to me, and it's down on all fours, clearly down on all fours. You can tell, because it's kind of brushing up against that tarp. Well, if I'm reaching down trying to grab the bottom of the tarp, I'm going to jerk it up, and I'm going to blow this thing's head off if it's not something that I like to see. And I remember the act of touching that tarp, the tarp stopped moving past a point. I was touching this thing with the tarp, so I'm touching it, and it's not going anywhere. Now, of course, that should have instantly been, obviously that's not a bear, because a bear would have crapped its pants and took off running in the other direction if I touched it. If anything had touched it, first off, a bear would never do this, right? They just don't. Even like the meanest rabid black bear or anything like that would never act this way. This is completely out of whack. But I'm not thinking that. I'm thinking I'm getting ready to eat. So, and I'm touching it, and I rip that tarp up, and I turn that light on, and I reach and grab that 44 Magnum, and I'm looking, and now I see it. And it has blonde hair, not like real long blonde hair, but it's, I think, longer than what a bear's would be. It's down on all fours still. It has wide hips. It had the, I don't know. It was looking back at me. It was looking right back at me. You can tell the face was kind of flattish. The eyes were shining green back at me. They weren't red, and I think that was because of the angle that the light was hitting it, and it was huge. I mean, it was easily grizzly bear size, much bigger than any black bear, and it took off directly through there. Like, it just took off. That wasn't down then. It just took off right in between there, went up in there, and now I'm like, I'm standing up because I jumped out of the hammock, jumped out, and I'm looking, and I see it, and you see everything, that it was slamming into, moving. I got a pretty good view of its body. I got a really good view of its body. Very muscled, athletic, very heavy. Not like a grizzly bear in the sense that a grizzly bear has that triangular shape, I would describe it, to its back. This was flat across the back, just like a person, but it was extremely just built. I mean, that's the way I would describe it. It was just put together. Female, it was definitely a female. Just absolutely incredible looking. But at the same time, I'm like, the adrenaline's going, and I'm just completely out of my mind because I was getting ready to shoot something, and I'm like, maybe that was a bear. I'm insane. Like, like the kill switch is flipped in my head, and I'm just thinking, I gotta calm down, right? And now I'm like completely out of my mind. And so I get my stuff up. I don't even remember if I put my boots on. Get my stuff up, get my gun, and I walk back up. Then it was easier to get my car down in here. I had that four-wheel drive vehicle. I had it down closer. I walk up to the car, and I get into the car, and I'm pouting, and I'm mad, and I'm texting my friends, and I'm trying to get calmed down out of that kill switch mode, and that's what I call it, that go hunt this thing down mode. Because if it was flipping in my head, if the synapses in my head were working and it clicked, it was like that was definitely a Bigfoot. I think if I had seen its face better, that would have helped me get over that fight or flight thing that was going on in my head, that kind of predatory mode that switched on. If I'd seen its face better, I wouldn't have been like that. But I'm still thinking that was a bear, that was a bear, that was a bear, Gotta go get it, I gotta go get it. It's messing everything up. I remember hearing from the car, because I had the windows cracked just so I could still listen to the sounds that were going on, because there's still knocks going on. There's still stuff walking around, still Bigfoot stuff going on, even though there's this this thing that's messing with me. But right there, see that rock? Well, this one specifically, I think, is about 10 feet tall, definitely about 10 feet tall. And I think I ran into this one several times. Saw the silhouette really well one night. I came down here one time after work, and it was nighttime. Forgot my flashlight, so all I had was my little Galaxy. I think it was no, it wasn't. It was just like a crappy little. No, that was the Note 3. It was a Galaxy Note 3 with a light on it. That's all I had. And so I meandered all the way back down in here into these woods, and I was messing with the gifts. I was putting some stuff out, and I shined the light up, from the gifts on up you can see how the hill goes up like that, up the hill, and something it was 10 feet tall. I was able to measure where it was standing, and it was up against a tree, and it was kind of like sticking out that way. You can see kind of like the silhouette of the shoulder and the head and the eye. One red glowing eye, sometimes two. It was kind of moving, just looking at me. And it was intimidating because it's so tall. But it was just out of the reach of that light. It's like I could tell if the light was, such and such weak to where I wouldn't be able to see it perfectly. But I could definitely see the silhouette of this very put together, human looking thing, just way too thick to be a person, way too put together to be a person, and also 10 feet tall with red glowing eyes. So that happened. I'm pretty sure that was the same one, the same female. And I'm pretty sure I heard her all the time. I've got all kinds of stories with this one. All kinds of stories with this one. But that was my second good sighting of one. That was a good sighting. Like, it took me a while to calm down and be like, hey, that was a really good detailed view of that. The only thing I didn't see perfectly was the face. I could tell the face was kind of flat, but I couldn't tell much else. And the face didn't seem to have hair on it. It seemed to be a bare-skinned face with very dark skin. At least as far as what I could tell. It was dark and everything was happening in a split second. I've never had that breakthrough sighting, though, where one just comes out and they stand in front of somebody, and it's just super cool and life-changing. I've never had that happen. I've always wanted it, never had it. There are definitely a few moments, though, where I could have had it if I wanted it. But not wanting to push the envelope and stuff like that, that was my mistake. I'm sure that I got a lot of thoughts about that. I got a lot of thoughts about events like that, and that's not what I want to get into for all this. I just wanted to tell some stories, and that's it. I've been rambling on for an hour and 15 minutes, being all excited and stuff about this. Those are the big breakthrough moments. There was a lot more, some way crazier stuff than that. It's like the more you give them, the more they can use to interact with you. That's how I'll put it. The more you relax, the more you open up, the more you make yourself vulnerable, and just really, I guess reaching out would be a way to put it. The more that they can use that. But if you don't do that, they won't be the ones that make that first move. It doesn't happen. So if you're out there, you're always treating them like an animal, that's what they're going to return back to you, because that's all they can do. You're only giving them opportunities to act like an animal because that's what you're putting out there. It's just common sense. That's what's going to happen. But if you interacting with them like they're a person or something like that, then they will. You'll start to see more of that come out, right? So a lot of it's based on you, how clever you are, and how open-minded, I guess, you are, because they are shy. I mean, it doesn't really matter where you go. Some of them are really aggressive. They'll get up in your face and charge you and stuff like that, but they're still shy. Wow, look at that. My mind is spinning with all sorts of different things that I could say about all this, all of this information just rushing back to my head. It's hard to keep it all straight. So many other stories that I could tell. Some of them are really interesting, but they require a lot of backstory, I think. And I don't want to do that right now because it's getting dark and I don't want to. I'm just tired. It's been a long day. Like I said, I got a lot of complications. This is my first time being out in the woods. It's because I have I gasp a little bit. Health problems. I'm getting a lot better. I'm getting in shape. Running a little bit. Been out hiking a few times. I don't really want to be out after night, in case something happens. Now I get a cell phone signal here now, which is kind of nice. I realized. I'm gonna drink me some water and I think that'll be it for this video. This is my intro video to the Bigfoot community, and I guess how I'll outro it is. So yeah, that's the least of it. I mean, those are really big experiences. If I'd had a script, I could have stayed on track a lot better. I was just winging it off of the top of my head with the most accurate details I had. There's a lot more. I mean, it's just a lot of work, a lot of effort and money and blood and sweat and tears that went into it, and it's still going. I'm getting back into it now, and I'm not going to stop. And I'm wanting to expand, teach other people what I've experienced, how I did things, what worked for me, how I got to where I was at, because there's definitely a method to the madness. I mean, you can't just go out in my experience, you can't just go out and just start winging it. You're not going to get anywhere. You got to start networking. You got to start reaching out to researchers. You got to start, almost philosophizing. A lot of it is just getting into people's heads, figuring it out, trying to put yourself in either another researcher's shoes and the Bigfoot shoes and the wildlife shoes around you. Also, you got to be able to read that a little bit. I just don't have a fear of them. I just never did. And I don't believe that I'm ever going to have an experience that makes me be afraid of them. I've been bluff charged several times. Lots of big scary sounds, had rocks thrown at me, all sorts of things like that people interpret. This is one of the things that drives me to research the way I do, get out there and put myself out there in harm's way to do this stuff, not because of the Bigfoot harm's way, but harm's way because of injury from falling, injury from snakes, spiders, bears, things like that. There's mountain lions in these mountains. There's some risk, but it's because those bluff charges and those things like that, people always interpret that as like, oh, it's this monster, it's something that you need to be on guard about. You need to be so afraid of it. I've seen these things hunt. I've seen what they can do. I've seen very well how they operate in a lot of different situations. And I'm just telling you that if they were dangerous, we would have killed all of them by now. We would have hunted every one of them to extinction. They wouldn't have stood a chance. The fact of the matter is that they're just not. They're not. You're not going to get hurt. They're not going to do something. They'll intimidate you, yes. They'll definitely do that. But a lot of that, I think, that's their sense of humor. It's almost like a sense of humor. It's like they're messing with you. It's a game for them. Or it's, like I said, like with the charges, sometimes definitely it's communication. Hey, leave, get out of here. No, I don't want you here. And, just follow suit, have some respect. And everything's fine. It's all very common sense to me. It's always been common sense, cut and dry, very easy to deal with, except for moments when they just stop interacting. That's the only thing that I really ever have any problems with them. They'll just start ignoring you sometimes for a month at a time. You'll still find tracks. You'll hear them every now and then, but they'll just stop coming up to you. And I think that's a test, too, to see what you do when they're not around, not messing with you, giving you what you want. I guess there's just so much to it. There's just so much to teach, so much that I still want to learn and experience. I want to go to other areas now because I've been coming up here so frequently. I don't know. I'm ready for more, and I'm ready to give more. I've been private all this time, maybe interacted with maybe a dozen people tops, and almost all of them are people I was learning from. None of them are people that I was going to the woods with. The only person that has ever been to this area with me ever in all of these years since 2013 is my dad one time. That's it. And I'm not going to start bringing people down here, but at the same time, I don't want to keep operating that way because I don't think it's healthy for the Bigfoot community. I don't think it's healthy for the Bigfoot because think of all the logging that's going on. The habitat encroachment is brutal right now. It's like I was saying at the beginning of this video, that in another year, these woods may not exist at all because the whole drive up here, there were entire mountains that have been dug down to the dirt. They're not going to be reseeded. They're not going to put trees on there. A lot of that land was private. It was owned by a hunting association. It has been sold and it is being divvied up and turned into housing. That's what's happening now, and could happen here. It could absolutely happen here. And I was talking to a good buddy of mine, very good researcher, amazing researcher, and about logging, because he's having a problem with that out in his area in Oklahoma, where logging companies are moving in. I think it has something to do with the pandemic. It's just a really opportune time for them to do it. and they're just waylaying these extremely important forests that have a very, very, very long history. I know at least up here, at least an 80, 90-year history in my family and in my friend's family. If we've been going out and interacting with them, we'd call them by different names. One of the names up here was Hufenagen. And it's a German, I don't know what the word means at all, but it was one of my friends, it was up in the northern end of these mountains. Her great uncles, great grandfathers and things, people to make a living, they would hunt the deer. That's how you get by up here. You didn't have grocery stores back then, and really, there's people probably still poach the deer up here for food, and they make a living like that. 100%, I believe it. Just impoverished area. It really is. It's just kind of the way it is, and that's not a bad thing. It's just the culture. Used to be coal mining stuff. That's, of course, gone to crap, but, we can get into that. But yeah, so the Hufenagen. So when they would go out hunting deer, and they would regularly run into these large, hair-covered, human-looking things. They didn't really know what they were, but they didn't have a problem with them. It said when you're out, specifically when you're out hunting deer, you would see them, and it's peaceful. You'd see it, look at you, then it'd walk off, and they just sort of understood that they hunt the deer too. Don't mess with them, and they don't ever mess with anything. Just another one of those things. People around here just understood that that's how it is, and that's going to go away. I mean, if they cap these mountains like that, because it's just the same as what I was talking about, the guy out in Oklahoma in those areas. It's the same way. I mean, some of those areas probably 100, 200 years of experience versus here. It's 100% gonna go away. Man, there is definitely something wrong with my hand. And even if it doesn't go away, it's still something that's going to happen. That's going to encroach on them very, very badly. And I don't want to see stuff like that happen. Because it's like he was saying, I'm loading my gun now. I don't know what that was. It sounded like it was very big. Oh, I hate this holster. Hey, look. It's one of those police holsters, so it locks I got my 9mm with me today. Put that in. Safety on. Yeah, I like this. It's a Beretta 92 FS, 15 rounds. Put it in. So while we're putting that in, I'll finish up my note. So that's gonna stress our population out a lot in these areas, and this is something that's going on all around the country, and it's never going to stop. It's always been this way. It's always going to be a problem. If they put houses up here in these mountains where they've cut a lot of this down, those areas are now permanently off limits to the Bigfoot in those areas. Unless those people, because I know there's some communities that's out there. I've traveled to one of them, and I've seen it. I've seen this before, where the locals they know about them. They keep it hush hush. They it's kind of like protecting them, I guess, in a way. And so there can be some kind of, I guess, cohabitation or something. That's not going to happen here. It's just not. You got people moving in from different areas. People moving out of cities right now is a big thing into a lot of these rural areas for retirement in enormous numbers, to the point that we can't, locals like me, I grew up here in East Tennessee. We can't really survive here that well. We just can't afford to have a house because houses are all twice the price. We're kind of getting on a tangent here, but this is related to what I'm talking about. Houses are twice the price of what they ever have been, ever. It's the highest it's ever been. It's twice the price. So nobody can own. Everybody's buying up all the land, divvying it up, and building these outrageously overpriced houses. And the rent is doing the same thing. The rent also is doubling. So there's a lot of stress that's going on right now. Lots of stress. And it's not just stress for people, it's stress for them too, because it's encroachment on these on all these woods. But yeah, so I guess that's, hopefully that is a good watch. I'm going to continue with another video. That's just a walk video. Some water. That's what I need to do. Yeah, I don't know. There's a lot of people out there that don't really want them to get discovered. I've got my own feelings about this now, just seeing the way, these woods are really important. The way things are going in a lot of other places up north and out west, with people moving into the woods and tearing them down and things like that. I think that it's time for people to stop being that way. It's time to start getting a little more realistic about the effect that people have on them, on these areas, on the woods, on Bigfoot, or just wildlife in general. Because if you don't start taking it serious, people keep, I really do believe that if people keep being the way that they are right now, just kind of aren't pushing it, like you got people out here doing amazing projects and they'll put all this effort into it and then they'll stop doing it. And that's for a variety of different reasons, and some of it is just because they just don't want to, like one of them was a video project, and well, that got shut down, and the guy just kind of stopped. It didn't release any of the information at all. It was just a waste. It was a waste of time. That's what it was. And it was like, a lot of thought, like stuff like that pisses me off, to be honest. I mean, that's all there is to it. I don't think it's right. I don't think it's right to withhold that information, because I don't feel like if that's your information, it's not about, that's something that I've said, it's not about the researcher or the person that's out there on the property, that's dealing with these people, Everybody, researchers always, it feels like to me, make it all about them. And it's not about you. This stuff isn't about you. Even though you can gain a lot from it, it's about them. People are going to start making it more about them and their interests. And that's all I'm going to say to that. It's time to make a change.